November 30th, 1961. The Cabinet Room, the White House. President Kennedy signed a single page of typed paper. Top secret, sensitive. It authorized a covert program with a $50 million budget, 2,400 personnel, and one specific objective: the assassination of Fidel Castro. For 14 years, the program had no public name. When the Senate finally investigated it in 1975, they found 8 separate plots. 3 of them were attempted during this one program. This is the file. To understand how the United States government came to be in the business of attempting to assassinate a foreign head of state, you have to understand what April of 1961 had done to John F. Kennedy. The Bay of Pigs invasion had failed in 3 days. 114 Cuban exiles were dead. 1,189 were prisoners. Kennedy had stood before the American Society of Newspaper Editors and said, quote, "I am the responsible officer of the government," end quote. In private, according to declassified memoranda, his reaction was sharper. He said he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. He fired Allen Dulles, the director of Central Intelligence. He fired Richard Bissell, the deputy director who had run the operation. But he did not abandon the goal. By November, he was ready to try again, differently. The man chosen to design Operation Mongoose was Edward Lansdale. Lansdale was a brigadier general in the United States Air Force. He had run psychological operations in the Philippines and South Vietnam. He was, by reputation, an unconventional thinker. The Mongoose program was housed inside the CIA, but reported through Robert Kennedy directly to the White House. It had a budget of approximately $50 million. It had a staff of 400 people in Washington and an additional 2,000 at JM Wave, the CIA station in Miami, which became briefly the largest CIA station in the world outside Langley. What did they do? Quote, "The plan envisaged a 4-phase approach culminating in a popular uprising in October 1962. End quote. From Lansdale's own February 1962 memorandum, declassified in 1996. Quote, Phase 1, action to incite resistance to weaken the Castro government from within and without. Phase 2, build up, develop the means to support a revolt. Phase 3, readiness, marshal forces in late summer 1962. Phase 4, open revolt, October 1962. End quote. The methods are extensively documented. There was a plan to contaminate Castro's diving suit with tuberculosis spores. There was a plan to plant explosive seashells where Castro liked to swim. There was a plan to pass him a poisoned fountain pen. There was a plan, according to Sheffield Edwards, the CIA's director of security, that involved cooperation with 2 senior figures from the Chicago outfit and a former mob boss in Cuba. That last plan was authorized in 1961. Documents show it remained active during Mongoose. By August 1962, the Special Group, the interagency body that oversaw Mongoose, was meeting twice a week at the White House. In a memorandum dated August 8, 1962, Robert Kennedy reportedly told the group, quote, "No time, money, effort, or manpower is to be spared." End quote. Privately, in conversations recorded by aides, the Attorney General had begun calling Operation Mongoose a, quote, "Pyrrhic victory." End quote. Then came October. On October 14, 1962, a U-2 reconnaissance aircraft photographed something in western Cuba. The photographs showed Soviet medium-range ballistic missiles. The next 13 days are the subject of another story. What is less well known is what happened to Operation Mongoose. It was suspended on October 30, 1962, while the missile crisis was still being negotiated. It was formally terminated in early 1963. The 8 plots against Fidel Castro continued under a different name. They would continue intermittently until 1965. For the next 13 years, the American public knew almost nothing about Operation Mongoose. There were rumors, there were memoirs, there were leaks, but the documents themselves remained classified. In December 1974, a journalist named Seymour Hersh published a story in the New York Times. The headline read, quote, "Huge CIA operation reported in US against anti-war forces, other dissidents in Nixon years." End quote. The story implied, and subsequent reporting confirmed, that the agency had conducted operations far beyond its legal mandate. In response, on January 27, 1975, the United States Senate established a select committee. Its mandate was to investigate intelligence activities. Its chairman was Senator Frank Church of Idaho. The committee held hearings for 11 months. It interviewed 800 witnesses. It reviewed 110,000 pages of documents. On November 20, 1975, it issued its first interim report. This is what the report said. Quote, "The committee concludes that officials of the United States government initiated plots to assassinate Fidel Castro from 1960 through 1965. End quote. Quote, "We have evidence of at least 8 specific plots." End quote. Quote, "The most ironic of these plots took place on November 22, 1963, the very day that President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas." End quote. The committee did not, the report emphasized, find direct evidence that the president had personally ordered any specific assassination, but it did find a culture in which, quote, "the unspoken understanding between high officials," end quote, was that the agency was authorized to take whatever measures were necessary. The Director of Central Intelligence, Richard Helms, was asked about this in his testimony. He used a phrase that has since become famous in intelligence history. Quote, "plausible deniability," end quote. The Church Committee report ended Operation Mongoose decisively, even though the program had formally ended 12 years earlier. It led to the creation of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. It led to Executive Order 11905, signed by President Ford in February 1976, which prohibited any United States employee from engaging in or conspiring to engage in political assassination. That executive order remains in force today. In 2007, in response to a Freedom of Information Act request, the CIA released a 693-page internal review titled simply "Family Jewels." Most of it had been written in 1973. Most of it concerned activities undertaken during Operation Mongoose. The documents had been classified for 34 years. They are now available online at the website of the National Security Archive. What this story made clear is that the line between intelligence work and policy is thinner than the public is generally allowed to know. The line between covert action and political assassination is also thin. In October 1962, a U-2 photographed missiles in Cuba. But for 18 months before that, and for 2.5 years after, there were also other things happening. The documents say so. What this led to in October 1962, that story is on this channel.